Hello and welcome once again. This is Nelson Karanja for Global Oak Media. Today I'm excited to present my very first tutorial for those who are dealing with Unreal Engine for their projects. I want to start with something that is quite a common problem that we encounter when we are dealing with procedural content generation, PCG, where you have multiple splines and sometimes they are overlapping. There are certain areas you would want to exclude so that no content is spawned on those particular areas. So let's go ahead and create a project here. I will call this PCG Spline. Now create that. So here we are. Before we do anything, I want to make sure that we have all the plugins we need because not all of them are available in the open version. Some of them are experimental. I'll go ahead and activate water, which is experimental. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in my PCG, I'll bring in that one and also the geometry one. Yes, and then it's going to ask me to restart. Here we are. I'll go in and create a new level, and I'll create an empty one, and I'm going to bring in my lights again, all of them, and I'm going to activate the volumetric fog. That's okay, and I'll create the landscape. I won't bother to change anything here, and I won't even put any kind of sculpting on this. I don't want to take more time than necessary. However, I can change this landscape material. I can check for anything that has to do with ground, and I can change that to grass. I won't bother too much about the tiling and all that. I'll assume it's quite okay. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and bring in some assets that we may need to use for illustration. So under content, I'll go in here and create a folder and call it 3D assets, and I will go ahead and import a house which I have downloaded here, a wooden house in GLB format just to make my work much easier. I will force all mesh as type, static mesh, and again I will combine all the meshes. This kind of makes sure that I don't get any of those pieces that come when you are bringing in a model. This is from Sketchfab, and sometimes you get a door, a window, a tile, and you have so many pieces to deal with. I don't want that. Here I've got my model already in now. I will go ahead and bring it in somewhere into this environment. Okay, and I will bring in a character, a mannequin, just so I can keep an eye on the size of what I'm dealing with, so that looks very realistic. Now I also want to go ahead and bring in some assets from Quixel Bridge. And you can search for anything you want here, but I think I've used some of these before, so they should be available in my local assets. So this is Dragon. I already downloaded it, so I can simply add it into my project, and I can also add maybe grass. I can add that. I don't think I need anything else here. Let me just put that one for good measure. That's okay. And now if you go back to here, you will find you have a Megascan folder with the assets that you have downloaded. That's fine, all there. So what else do I need? Now let's bring in some things that already have a spline associated with them. I will go up here and I will bring in place actors panel and search for water. We activated the plugin for water, so this now should be available. I'll go ahead and bring in a lake, a mass of water, and put it somewhere here. Okay, that's our lake. Zoom out. Okay, there we go. We have our lake. And by that size, it's basically just a small lake, a water mass. I'll bring in a river as well, and I will make it intersect with this lake like that. So now basically, remember, this is about dealing with multiple splines. So we have two splines already. This one is a closed loop kind of spline, and this one is open. It's more linear, it's just a line, but they both have water and they come already with their blueprint environment. Now we can also create our own blueprint environment so that we can also be able to have more things to deal with. The first one is I want a fence around this particular house. So let me select my mannequin and zoom in. I want a fence around this. Let's go ahead and create another folder. Let's just call that fence volume. And in here, you're going to bring in two entities here. We bring in an actor as a blueprint and call this blueprint fence. And we're also going to need a graph for that, PCG graph. And we call this fence graph. Fence graph. If we open this one up, we double click. Let's go in here and let's have two things. We add first of all a spline. Make sure you don't get any of this, just get a plain spline. And we want this spline to be rectangular because we want it around our house. If you check our house, which we have here under 3D assets, if you click on this one, you can see the approximate size is 1330 by 976. So I would want my fence to be bigger than that so that we can have some compound around that. So I'll come back here and I'll delete this one because I don't need it. I just want to generate. Instead of drawing manually, I'll go to spline generation and I will click rectangle, and I'll set my dimensions here as 1600 by 1300. That's okay. I'll come here and make sure we close the loop. It doesn't close unless you actually close. So do that. Okay. And the moment you do that, you have this tie end that comes here, which is a bit of a pain to work with. So I'll come here and change the spline type from curve to linear, and that gets rid of that. The other thing is I would want to select all spline points and force them to snap to the floor. Okay, I think that's all I need to do here. Then what else we need to add in this one is the PCG itself, volume. And I come here and I click, and the only thing we need in this one is that it's going to need a graph here, and we have already prepared for that by, if you come to this, we already have a fence graph here, which we can either drag and drop here or simply make sure it's highlighted, and then we just click there and now it is selected and we can get out of here. Okay, So what do we need to do here? We need to go into this graph and create some things now. We want to be able to, first of all, get data from our landscape. Get landscape data sampler. Now we won't see anything even if we debug this. If you hit D, you won't be able to see anything because we haven't actually brought in these things into our scene now. So we can go ahead and bring in our spline and bring it around our PCG, around our house, and let's just try and make sure that it covers that area. That's fine. So now we have a fence around our house represented by that spline. Let's go in and also bring in this PCG graph, and we want to make it big enough to intersect with our water, but also this river, because we want to be able to show how to deal with those overlaps. I'm going to go ahead and scale this to 50 by 50. Let's go back to our graph editor and start to spawn some stuff. So now if you come here and you hit D to debug, you should see lots of these things now being spawned, and we want to be able to change those points. So transform points. We remove debug there and debug this one. You can see how that will be. We want to make some of them really small, some of them quite large, and we want them to be many because the tree I got is rather small. So offset, we can offset them maybe 10, 10, 5. No, 5 is too, it's not good on that in the C. Maybe -1 to make sure that they are actually in the ground, and then offset here. We can do 15 and offset -1 and -2, just to make sure that we have that. Rotation just on that axis is good enough. Maybe some will be leaning, I don't know, maybe 3 and 5. Some of them could be leaning. As for scale, I want them to, some of them be very small, maybe from 2, and I want the others to be up to maybe around 3 or 4. We can do 4, maybe 3. Then we will see how that one works when we actually get our items. Now the only thing I would want here is to also change the sampling. I'll change this from 50 so that they stop sitting on each other, and make this one a bit more points per square. So now we have many of them, but smaller. So we could still probably go to transform and change this still, but let's get out of that. Let's go ahead and spawn something here, static mesh spawner, and we're going to come here and get our mesh selector from that the mesh entries, and index descriptor, and we go and select something that has a tree written on it. We can do the dragon one, and we already have them right there. Probably I even want to do another one, but maybe just for the sake of illustration, we could have another one, another mesh entry. We could click and get a second one, and we go to the descriptor and we go here and now select something else. About some grass. Let's put some grass while we are at it. Now they are all there jabbled together. The important thing is they are all, some of them are growing inside the water, some of them are growing inside the house. I'm sure if you go inside this house, yeah, you see, you've got things growing inside here. It's a bit weird, but it's the. So we want basically to get rid of anything growing inside this and also from here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a fence around this house. So let's go ahead and go back to this. We go here and say get spline data. Now here by default it's referencing itself. We want to change that and we go to all world actors. We don't want to tag anything because we created it using a blueprint, so it has a certain class. We can do that by class. We can come here and we do fence BP, which we already did that when we created the blueprint. And we can come here and we can say spline sampler. We wanted to sample from on the spline because we want to do a fence around the house, but we want that to be by distance, not by subdivision. And we can now come here and also do transform points, and we also do static spawn for that. Now each of these, if you debug, you will find certain things on that. You may not be able to see them very clearly because they are all being spawned along that particular boundary. But if we come here now and we actually put in a mesh entry, go to the descriptor and go in and bring in something. I didn't download anything that would serve for a poll. However, we can use this pillar here. It's just a straight thing. Straight away you can see we already have our fence around our house. Too big nevertheless, so we can come to transform points and we can scale them down. I don't want to rotate anything, I'll just leave them as they are, but the scale 0.25. Yes, more like it. Okay, so we have that. Now that is our fence area, and if you see, yes, it's there, but we want to get rid of everything growing inside of that area, kind of like these plants in here. They shouldn't be there. Get rid of those ones there. So what we do, we drag another output from this get spline data, and we also call that spline sampler. Now if you look at it, at first we were getting things on spline by distance. Now we want to sample inside this particular spline area, this loop. Now to do that, we change this from on spline to on interior, and it's going to complain because now it senses that we are about to conflict what we wanted to do, but that's okay, it will do just fine. Now once we do that, we need a projection node because whatever we want to get rid of is coming from this surface here. So we need to bring that from the get landscape data and bring into our projection. Okay, target, that will be our projection target, and we now can come and put our difference node, and we don't want this being the source. Actually, this is what we are trying to get will be removed from here, so we remove that one, click and get that to be the difference. Now let's disconnect this temporarily because now we need to bring all these so that it can actually be the source of this node. And now we remove this and bring it out to this one. Now technically that should get rid of whatever is in this volume here. Now if we go around, you might still find a stubborn one that remains. You can see we have this one here. Now that could be because of, now if you check here, we have what in this difference node, instead of sampling by minimum, we need to go binary. That should take care of that. Now if you check, everything should be good. We don't have anything there now that shouldn't belong. And if you go inside the house as well, no more stuff growing in there. Here we see we have plants everywhere. We need to start first of all by getting rid of this one that is in our lake. And we can do that by let's move all these slightly up and move those ones up, and we can come here and do another one, get spline data, and again it's still pulling from itself. We can change that world class and we change that by class, and we change that to this came through a water body lake. So check for that water body lake. We come and again spline sampler, and we change that from on spline to interior because the water is contained inside. And right now you can see we have all these items in there. So we'll still pass it through the same projection node because they are all eliminating the same content that is coming from this landscape. So we take it and go into our projection, and the moment you do that, everything disappears because it's still going through that projection node, going to the difference node, and then going to the static spawner. Okay, so that gets rid of that. Let's go back to CG graph and we do the final one, get spline data. Spline, we change that from self to world class, not by tag but by class. This came with the tag of a river because that's the blueprint that was used, water body river, and spline sampler. Now this is on spline because, like we said, this river is not a loop. You can see it's just a simple line, unlike this one for the lake. Yeah? So that will present us a problem because now being a line and yet it has some volume, we need to adjust the bound. So we need another node called bounds modifier, and that's what we are going to use to pass through the same projection node, and everything else follows that. If you check, nothing much has changed. That's because being a line, a spline, a linear spline, doesn't have enough bounds to affect this, and that's why we have this bounds modifier, so that we can come here and change a few parameters to try and capture whatever is here so that it can be included in the projection and also this difference node before everything spawns out. So go to the bounds modifier. Let's see whether 5 will change anything. No, that doesn't do anything. Let's put 5 there until we see which one doesn't change anything there. Let's remove that. Let's go to this axis, then let's put 5. Yeah, that got rid of some of this on this side. So let's try 5 on the other side. And this you have to experiment, because depending on the direction your river is going, it could be any of these axes that is actually being affected. So you cannot just say that here you change on this axis, because if, for example, your river is facing a different direction altogether, I have a feeling you would have to tinker with those values until you get the one that is actually the culprit. So that's fine. So you can see we don't have any content around the house, and we don't have any that is in the river or lake, and that is actually what we were trying to do. So you can now come here and maybe try to make your graph a little bit more organized if you were presenting this maybe for your project. Perhaps you could come and have that as marked as something, and you could arrange these things in a better way just to make your work a bit easier or more organized. If you hit a Q on that, they would line up, and I could also have these ones Q, and they would line up. But I'm not going to dwell too much on that, but that is basically all I needed to do. So ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our tutorial for today. We have looked at how to work with multiple splines, multiple blueprints, and how to get rid of content that falls in areas that you don't want them to be spawned upon. So until next time, thank you very much. This is Nelson Karanja for Global Loc Media. Always a pleasure to have you checking our tutorials. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that like button. Drop a comment, help us see a better way of doing these things. If you know a better way of going about what you've just done, please also, because there is always a more efficient way to do things. So this is where I am at, and I believe that we can always get better. So please engage with us. Until next time, bye and have a wonderful time. Thank you very much.